Okay. Today I'm joined by 4 panelists to discuss DeFi, Decentralized Finance, which is this new concept that has been growing, I would say, the last year or so in size and mostly been on the Ethereum network, which is the second biggest cryptocurrency. And the idea is to take classically centralized financial ideas, lending, trading, payments, and so on, and try to make them into a decentralized way where you have a smart contract, that's so called, an autonomous contract that runs on the Ethereum network, execute the commands instead of a central company. And one part of this is to build a modular system where you can connect a lot of these decentralized finance apps together to create an ecosystem. And on the background of this kind of hype that has been building around DeFi, I thought I would start out with maybe asking you guys what you think about this DeFi trend. Is it the next kind of hype word, as we saw blockchain were maybe 2-3 years ago, or is this something that will stick by and will be here for the long term? What do you guys think? Frank, you're smiling funnily. Want to start?
Yeah, I don't think the technology and the applications as such is a fad. I mean, we went from zero to, I just looked at defipulse.com for those interested, where you can see how much of the value is locked up, and we're like 26 billion. Obviously, there's a lot of activity, unlike the ICO that was sort of a come and go. But that is, we're seeing fundamentally interesting concept being developed in terms of decentralized applications that will have an impact that will stay around. Things like Uniswap, where I think they were matching the volume that you had in centralized exchanges at some point. So for me, it's not a fad, and it will be here to stay.
I will have two answers to that question, both no and yes. So no, it's not a fad, simply because if you look at the amounts of capital that is injected into these contracts and the amount of money people are willing to put up, and this is real capital. So therefore, I mean, total value locked $26 billion says something about the amount of capital here, besides the growth, which has been incredible over the last year and 90 days. But I would also answer that yes, maybe it is a fad, and I'm just thinking about the history of Bitcoin here. That Bitcoin has had a lot of different narratives throughout history. It started with digital cash in Satoshi's white paper, and then it moved on to digital gold. And I think that crypto needs a strong narrative. It has always had a very strong narrative, but it definitely needs one. And for me, the first killer use case of crypto is trading, and which is like gambling with a narrative. So that's amazing for a lot of people. And so narratives are important, and DeFi is the strongest narrative right now. So no and yes.
Just to jump in there, I agree that I wrote a blog post on the narrative of blockchain and cryptocurrency, and it has changed over time. So first it was Bitcoin, then it became blockchain. Then in 2016, we saw the reemergence of cryptocurrency. Then we had the ICO fate, and I agree, it's now perhaps the DeFi terminology. But terminology aside, of course, things move beyond that when it looked at the actual technological innovation underneath it.
I guess maybe if we bring up the ICO period, an interesting question is if we had this exact conversation in 2017 during the ICO hype, would we have said that ICOs are a fad or that it is the new future of finance, revolutionizing venture capital was a big thing.
Maybe you can say a couple of words about what an ICO is for the people who don't know.
Well, ICO is when it's called an initial coin offering. Basically, it means that some type of company makes up a cryptocurrency and sells it to people in exchange for other kinds of money, such as regular fiat currency or sometimes Bitcoin or Ethereum. I think in 2017 there was a big hype that people were doing ICOs on Ethereum, so they were buying Ethereum and then using that Ethereum to invest in getting tokens into different projects. And I think over time there were a lot less ICOs, mainly because many of them violated securities laws. And it's disputed whether all violated or only some. But I think we can agree that there's fewer ICOs today, and that it has somewhat calmed itself in terms of the enthusiasm. I have fewer of my not everyday crypto friends that run spreadsheets with different checkbox models about which coin they're going to invest in today than what I had in 2017. And I would say, if I can present some of my views, I think there's definitely similarities in terms of the attitudes that drive this particular cycle and the previous one. We have the same thought leaders. It's in both cases, it's about primarily about buying tokens, with those tokens going up in value. In the case with DeFi, there's also a lot of most of the usage is in leverage. So you're locking up your Ethereum in order to free up some stable coins, which you will use then to buy more Ethereum. And so you do that as much as the thing allows you to, which is also why I'm not mega fan of the value locked metric, because it counts the same coins over and over again. Very similar to how it works in the fiat economy, but maybe equally unfair. But I would say that that's a big part of the DeFi thing, and that it's I guess similar to how the ICO thing is, that it's in a part of the space where the regulators haven't yet figured out what is going on, and so you can sort of pretend that this is something new entirely, and we have never seen anything like this before. And it's definitely not any of the other 5 things that are regulated. This is something new.
I mean, I think that ICOs open up a lot of possibilities for early stage projects so that they could get funded really quickly. I think of an ICO as an IPO, but in crypto land, and that IPO is usually the exit or the last step in the journey of a company that goes from early stage pre-seed to seed, and then VC capital gets invested, smaller VCs, and then larger, and then eventually, after you have grown a company for 10 or 20 years, you IPO it. So it's the final step in the life cycle of a business. And here you sort of flipped that and said that, no, we will start with raising as much capital as we can to...
It was also the final step.
Yes.
One punch kill.
Definitely. And I mean, this comes because if you do that first, then there's no history of the company, there's no track record to be seen, and so it's all just a bunch of promises. And I think that's also what happened, was that people weren't able to judge these projects. But I mean, Ethereum was an ICO, and it was a very successful one, and I think we're all happy that it occurred. And we can't say the same for other ICOs.
But the token economics have become a little bit more sophisticated in certain cases, with like release schedules and lockups and all of these mechanisms in order to at least have some kind of way to control the outcome in a better way than, you know, the blatant scams that we obviously did witness in 2017. So I mean, it is maturing, and I think, you know, ICOs are still here, of course, as well, and they evolve, and you see, for instance, Uniswap, to name it again, yeah, they introduce a different type of token, a different model. They call it a governance token. So there's still a lot of evolution in the token models itself. And I mean, there's always going to be scam projects, and that I think we saw in 2017, much like the early days of the internet, where you have all these startups with crazy startup ideas come around, and many of those didn't survive, but the good projects are still around. And there are quite a few of these projects that launched in, well, maybe not 2017. The majority aren't, but there's still projects around that are doing cool stuff, right? And they have actually been building and executing on their roadmap.
So go ahead, Christian.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Christian. I just want to start with saying a bit about myself. So I started a BTCX back in 2011, and we run a Bitcoin exchange in the Nordic markets. And for now, I'm the board member, and the company is actually doing an IPO, perhaps an ICO. We'll see what we choose, but. For me, DeFi is definitely Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin is the longest and proven cryptocurrency and DeFi project in itself. It didn't do any ICO or similar, but it's kind of when the narrative when DeFi started that the Bitcoiners, the maximalists, said that DeFi is a scam. But when it succeeded, now every Bitcoiner says, "Oh, Bitcoin is DeFi," which it is. But what is really interesting is what is happening within the Bitcoin sphere as well. Like 2020, you saw the in the beginning of May, you saw these big traders from Wall Street putting equity in or cash in Bitcoin and saying that it's a good speculum. And from there, you have had an extremely good journey. You had like companies like Mass Mutual or MicroStrategy, and you have Guggenheim. I mean, these really big old money companies and institutions are betting on Bitcoin, and it's also a bet on DeFi. It's like this decentralized finance, which is not governed by a company, which is not governed by a state or otherwise organization. We think that our money will grow better and safer in this environment than in other environments. And this is super interesting to see how the rest of the world now probably this year will follow. And because now we have all major players. I mean, insurance companies, we have investment funds, we have software companies, payment companies. All of them is now in Bitcoin, and some of them are also in Ethereum, but none of them are in these smaller DeFi projects like Uniswap or stuff like that. But I think from that area, we will have a few companies growing up and maturing and become the leader of that niche. And yeah, Uniswap is a good bet. We'll see in like 4 years which one of those who survived.
I mean, Christian, you're saying that Bitcoin is in DeFi, but I think that for most people, the Bitcoin is not in DeFi. It's sort of a new concept, and therefore Bitcoin is sort of its own, lives in its own island or maybe its own country, whereas DeFi is just the new thing popping up. So I think that both the general population, but also most people in this group would say that we have Bitcoin here and then we have DeFi over there, and they are a bit different. And to me, they have a lot of similarities, just like you point out. But I mean, I would say that the largest difference is that Bitcoin has to be more conservative, and Bitcoin is more conservative because Bitcoin cannot break. Every day that the Bitcoin network doesn't fail is a huge success for it, and also gives merit to the whole crypto ecosystem. Whereas crazy DeFi projects can just move fast and break things, Facebook style, and can therefore see a much faster pace of growth. So I think they are a bit different in their mentality and also in the burden and the responsibility that they have.
Would you say there's some similarities between what we've seen the last couple of days now with GameStop and all the other shares being hyped up by retail individuals, and maybe the spirit in DeFi, where they have names like Sushi Swap and they have different funny animals, and it's all very memey. It's very different from the kind of institutional finance and a bit on the Bitcoin brand, so to speak. Do you guys agree that there might be some parallels there in the kind of the the spirit of the movement, so to speak?
They're massive parallels. I mean, I think that we're seeing, and the GameStop thing is a minor thing. Arguably, the whole the capital storming is also like showing the impact of a couple of guys on the internet exchanging memes impacting the world and our understanding of the world. And I think that, and definitely crypto is also in that sense of things. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, it's a meme that Bitcoin has value, right? That it's a thing, and then all of the other things that are built on top of it, and all of the DeFi's and the emoji coins and all of the things. It just goes to show, and I think that, to be honest, I think this is the big narrative, and this narrative is probably much bigger than DeFi or whichever, like the narrative of like the power of memes and things being memed into existence. And yes, on that note, I would like to, as the tradition is, I have to be the Dogecoin guy in the group. But
was waiting for Dogecoin to be mentioned.
There we go.
Much wow.
If you remember the Bitcoin conference in 2014, where I was on the Dogecoin panel. But Dogecoin is, I mean, it's a meme currency. And I think it's one of the purest examples of this that we've had for a while. Something that is entirely silly and broken and bad in so many ways, and yet it flies.
The nicest part was where the founder was sort of fed up with it, and then the community just did not accept it and let it live on. He's like, no, this was a joke. Everybody, you're not getting it. This was a joke. Don't put your money in it.
I mean, I would argue that nothing can be decentralized if it has a CEO or a founder or a leader, right? And in that sense, Dogecoin is more decentralized than most of the DeFi projects that have CEOs and venture capitalists and all of those things.
How do you guys look at that decentralization of, for instance, the governance token model with Uniswap? How do you guys look at that? Because it is kind of interesting where they take a centralized approach to a development and then they issue the governance token to try to decentralize it.
To be honest, we've had governance tokens for a long time. They're called shares. We've had it since always. And if you have a share, you can vote on the operation of the company, and anybody can own shares. And there is, I guess, certain inconveniences in terms of buying unlisted shares and all of that, which is much more convenient with cryptocurrency. But fundamentally, it's the same thing. I mean, there is a company, right? If there isn't a company, it doesn't have a CEO. If it has a CEO, then there is a company. If it has if Andreessen Horowitz invested into it, then it's a company. If it has a board, then it's a company. And then if you present it as we're a token project with governance, yeah, sure. I mean, my company also has governance and it's decentralized and people can buy shares.
Well,
it's just a little bit more inconvenient.
Well, that's the thing. From a legal perspective, is it then a security? Is it not a security? Where does the influence start? Where does it? All right, let's see again how that plays out with Uniswap, right? I'm sure they had better lawyers than some of the token projects going at it, but yeah, because it's kind of like, where does that governance start and stop when you also have a company involved in that whole mix, right? Because you're right, like if you have an entity with shares and you have capital, following the what you need to do from an investment point of view, but then you have a decentralized network with a governance token, and you have that open source where a party like SushiSwap that can do copy paste and start a competing business. How does that play out from an economics point of view for both the shareholders, and how does it work out for the token holders?
Okay, maybe one topic that I'd like to discuss is this, that a lot of the DeFi products right now are around speculation, as some of you mentioned previously, and it has gotten some criticism that it's basically just a way to get more leverage and to get more transactions into the system. Do you guys think that there will be other applications that are not connected to trading cryptocurrencies, or will it stick with this niche that it's found?
It can actually be trading other assets than just cryptocurrencies or crypto assets. So if you have an Oracle service and a futures contract, you can actually create any financial asset that is trading in the real world, for example, S&P 500 or Apple stock or whatever, and put that on in a DeFi setting, and the only thing you need there is an oracle or a set of oracles that is specialized in fetching the data from the real world, in this case market data, and feeding it into the DeFi world. And so yeah, we might get speculation on traditional financial assets, which I don't think is a bad thing, by the way, because I mean, just from a capitalist point of view, more people being able to buy and sell things is definitely good for the world. So that's my my take on this. And then of course there are maybe some more interesting applications outside of finance that you other guys can bring up.
What I find interesting, just to jump on that point, is when you are able to follow, for instance, a stock, that you can move an asset that is normally traded within office hours, within like the market hours, and suddenly you can turn it into a 24-hour market, right? So it starts acting as a sort of a prediction market for where the stock market opens the next week. But I haven't really seen, or maybe I've missed it, but are there good platforms that are already following like stock prices and those kind of things? Not really, right? Nobody dares to touch it from a security regulation.
FTX lets you trade.
FTX, yeah, I did see that one.
You can buy GME and.
Yeah, but FTX is a centralized exchange. So
what
there are some places like Synthetics or some. I mean, there is I know that Multicoin Capital invested in a company. I think it's called the Perpetual Protocol. So they're building perpetual swaps, which is basically a futures contract that settles every hour or every 20 minutes. So that way you can always be long or always be short in this asset you want to trade in. And I think that either they are launching it right now, or people are sort of testing it out. I've not put my money in there. I'm too risk averse for that. But
it's decentralized, right? You don't have to put your money in there.
Right.
I'd say, like, in terms of the gambling and versus non-gambling things, I think that I mean, the crypto space is not primarily, I would say, about gambling. It's about freedom. But what we notice is that the first and biggest thing that people use the freedom for is for gambling. And so, right? And I mean, it's as simple as, like when the Soviet Union fell, you started to have MLM schemes popping up, right? It's like it seems like when people get financial freedom, the first thing that they do is to scam each other and be scammed until there is a certain evolution. And I think that in the crypto space, I mean, obviously the gambling or speculative investment, call it what you want to call it, like those things are 90-something% of it. Because it just means better, right? I mean, it's like with what we're seeing now with the Wall Street bets. It's just, it makes for good stories and people want to get richer. So it's one of the easiest things to create. But it's always the case, and it's always been the case that there is also all of the other things that are built in the crypto world. They're sometimes eclipsed by the gambling. It's the other 2% that are growing in the shadow of the sort of Las Vegas like things. But there is always, I guess, some type of ecosystem, and I think that the freedom related things are necessary. Like you need to have the decentralization, you need to have the crypto economy in order to do the speculative things, and the speculative things also feed into that. And I think that if you're, I don't know. I think we just have to come to terms with that. This is how these things work, and then figure out how to what to do with that.
Another area of DeFi where it can grow is in gaming. We have a lot of big gaming companies trying to build the next big metaverse, And if you look a little bit into the NFT space, where the blockchain games are evolving, I mean, what is the first thing humans do when they interact? Well, they trade, they exchange things with each other. So in computer games, NFTs make sense because everything are digital objects, and you can represent them on the blockchain, which that's an NFT and a digital object on the blockchain. And then you can just add a trading layer on top of that, which would be the DeFi. So I think that the computer games will definitely use DeFi in some way or the other. What we see now is you have the DeFi, you have the cryptocurrency, which I see more or less the same. You have the digital metaverse, which is entering more and more into the cryptocurrency world. Especially when interoperability between digital world is happening, and then suddenly DeFi makes sense, because then you need to trade everything. Then you have access swords, you have horses, you have cars, you have lands, and of course you can trade that through the game engine itself. But I think since it's on the blockchain, you would like to have all the other financial services as you have in the normal world, and there DeFi could be a very nice way to integrate, since it's just a smart contract. You can integrate it however you like in a game. So that's an interesting topic.
It's going to be interesting to see the development over DeFi the next couple of years then. If it's just going to be used for speculation, or if we're going to have houses and items and all of belongings and stocks and advanced contracts on it. I guess time will tell. Thank you so much for joining me on this panel, and we'll see what the future holds.